Okay, okay. All right, we finally managed to start. We only have like 42 minutes left. Cool. I'll work with it. Okay. So we're going to finish up by talking about finishing up our section on personality, and then we're going to start talking about social psychology. All right. Are you going to be slow too? Oh, gosh. Okay. No. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about focusing on the self. So how many of you have had this happen where you go somewhere where you don't really know a lot of people, and all of a sudden you do something goofy, like maybe you're like me and you fall up the stairs and somebody's like, oh yeah, oh no, that looks really bad. Are you doing okay? Have you ever had that happen to you? You trip up the stairs, you do something embarrassing, you're wearing the wrong thing, and you're worried everybody's staring at you. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is not necessarily what happens. People generally are not going to be staring at you or anything like that. Everything okay back there, you two? Okay. Make sure to focus. So we have this idea that everybody is watching us, especially when we are doing something really, really embarrassing. And the truth of the matter is that most people don't actually care about you all that much. This is what is known as the spotlight effect. So when we do something embarrassing, or when we're new to a place, or we're feeling kind of awkward, we kind of feel like everybody's looking at us, like there's a huge, gigantic spotlight on us, and everybody is laughing at us or judging us. It's okay. It's okay. You can come in late. You don't know it. Like, it's okay. But the truth of the matter is that when embarrassing things happen, most people around us do not actually think about us that much. So I'm going to tell you about a really interesting research study that people actually did to look at the spotlight effect. So they had people go to a party wearing a really embarrassing t-shirt. Do you want to know what the t-shirt was?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. How many of you are familiar with Barry Manilow? He sang Copacabana. He sang Mandy. If you ever watch Don Bluth's Thumbelina, he's the one who wrote the songs for it. So yeah, he wrote Mary the Mole. Huh?
I've seen that movie.
Everybody who's probably seen that movie. Well, you're not missing anything. Don Bluth's done better work than that.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So they're wearing a really embarrassing Barry Manilow shirt. Now, how many of you would feel really embarrassed walking in wearing a Barry Manilow shirt? Some of you are like, that's for, what's a really,
like, what was the specific design though?
It was Barry Manilow on a t-shirt. It was his face on a t-shirt.
I think that's the kind of, I think not doing Barry Manilow, that's the kind of thing I'd walk into the grocery store and be like, and then I'd wear it, and then
Okay, so let's kind of put this into perspective. Who would be a really embarrassing person to have on a shirt right now?
Be something like
Elon Musk.
Yeah. Elon Musk, he's not embarrassing. He's just a jerk. He's a jerk.
Yeah,
he's not
yeah.
embarrassing.
He's so embarrassing.
Okay.
Think that I like.
Okay, well, that's fine. So let's say you went in wearing an Elon Musk shirt. Now, are some people going to judge you? Yeah, maybe. Are you going to feel like everybody is looking at you? Maybe. So here's the thing. Most people that were wearing the Barry Manilow shirt, most people didn't even notice. And if they did notice, they didn't care. It didn't change their opinion of the person. So one of the things that's kind of interesting, and this always happens to me when I go to places like the gym. So on my sabbatical last year, I went to the gym, and I went to the University of Missouri's rec center, and and I'm just going on the treadmill, and there's all these like 20-year-olds that are on the treadmill, and they look way better than me, and they're on the elliptical and they just look way better than me. And I'm like, man, they're going to think I'm old. Like, they're going to think I'm unattractive. Nobody cares. That's the thing. People are just happy that you're bettering yourself. Anybody who is judging you is probably a jerk. And generally, most people aren't going to judge you. And that's really what the spotlight effect teaches us. We think a lot of people watch us, but the truth of the matter is the only one who probably really cares is you. Does that kind of make sense? Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about different aspects related to the self, including self-esteem and something called the self-serving bias. So let's first talk a little bit about self-esteem. So healthy self-esteem can help us be successful. So self-esteem is basically you liking yourself, you accepting yourself, you being happy with yourself. So we know that low self-esteem can be really, really hard to deal with. And so your book kind of talks a little bit about why low self-esteem can be an issue. So one of the first things that we know about low self-esteem is that in general, if you don't feel like you have a lot of self-worth, you're going to put yourself into situations that are a reflection of that worth. You might put yourself in poor friendships that don't serve you, poor relationships that actively hurt you, feeling like you're stuck in situations like at jobs or things like that because you feel like nobody is going to listen to what you have to say. So low self-esteem can hurt us because it will put us in situations or it will guide us towards situations that ultimately can be harmful for us. Additionally, and I know that this is true for me, I know that when I'm not feeling very good about myself, I probably am not feeling very charitable towards other people. Now, who's the harshest critic in my life? Probably me. Odds are pretty good you are your own harshest critic as well. But what it means is that if you're judging yourself, you are probably also extending that judgment out to other people and possibly not treating them very well. And you're also not treating yourself well. Now, I have issues with my inner critic personally because I feel like if I don't have my inner critic, how will I continue to achieve? Here's the thing though, hating yourself isn't going to turn you into a person that you like or love. It may motivate you, but at the end of the day, it's not going to create somebody that you like. Now, your book does mention that sometimes low self-esteem can be a reflection of our reality. Maybe we're not living our life the way we feel that we should. However, I would also say I know a lot of people who are overachievers and struggle with their sense of self. I am certainly one of those people. So it's really important to try to make an effort to like yourself a little bit more. And the thing is, especially if you have been dealing with a very nasty inner critic for years, let's be completely honest. Getting rid of that inner critic is going to be a very long process. Why? Because it took you decades to build those bad habits. It's going to take time to undo them, but the majority of these things come from the environment, not from our genes. And so there is a way to be kinder to yourself. It's really all about being mindful. Your thoughts are not necessarily accurate reflections of reality. So I want to talk a little bit about the self-serving bias now. So generally, a self-serving bias is a readiness to basically perceive yourself favorably. So how many of you have occasionally gotten a poor grade on a test? It happens. Now, one of the things that I think is really interesting, and one thing that I generally appreciate about you, at least in this class, many of you, if you're struggling with a test, you will openly admit, oh yeah, I didn't study enough. Oh yeah, I had a lot going on. However, how many of you have had an instance where you did poorly on a test and you blamed either the instructor or the test or things like that? You're like, I didn't do bad because of me. I did bad because the test was too hard or the teacher didn't help me out enough. How many of you have had that happen? That is a self-serving bias in those cases. Now, I'm not always saying that teachers don't occasionally give hard tests, sometimes too hard, but I generally, when we're in these kind of situations, there's usually multiple factors. So it's not a good idea to blame ourselves entirely, but it's also not a good idea to blame external forces either. Kenna, did you have your hand up?
Kind of. It wasn't really related. I was just saying specifically, it was because it was one of the few times I'd actually studied for a test. None of the actual things that were in the study material were on the test.
Oh, that wasn't here, was it?
No.
Okay, good. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I don't try to trick you with these things.
It was not here.
Good.
Bad grade I got on a test that I felt like bad about.
Uh-huh.
I just melted down and decided that I was probably gonna flunk out of college and it's gonna be awful because I got like a 54 on that math placement exam.
Uh-huh.
I only found out when I came here.
Passing is
I did not
50%.
know that. I put myself in the intermediate class.
Oh, well, at least you're kind of solidifying those skills that you
Yeah,
need and
no, I
you'll
don't
feel,
regret it, but I absolutely had a total meltdown.
oh gosh, well, I can promise you, if you'd like anybody who registers with me, I let them know passing is a 50. I do try to let them know passing's a 50. Okay, so now I want you to raise your hand if I name your favorite letter. Is anybody's favorite letter A? Is anybody's favorite letter N? P? C? Do you want me to just go through the alphabet? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M.
If I have a picture.
Okay, is there anybody's favorite letter that I didn't mention because I'm tired of going through the alphabet? Okay, Savannah, what's yours?
I decided as a minute ago, it's R for the purposes of this class. It's a good letter, but I don't necessarily like have favorite letters, not a common question.
Okay, Aurora?
Z.
Okay, so you like Z? Yeah. I know. Other places it's Z. I know. This is the United States. We call it Z. I will also accept Z because I know we have people from Canada here and I think it's Z in Canada. Yes. Okay.
That's why I like them.
Oh, yeah.
Because I like words that have multiple pronunciations.
Okay. Any other letters that I did not name? Yeah, Heidi.
S.
Okay. Now, how many of you have a favorite letter that's in your name? Generally, we tend to like things that are associated with us and things that are related to us than things that are not. It's like, my favorite number is 13, and no, not because of Taylor Swift. I graduated 13th in my class in high school.
My mom's, she said her lucky number.
So oftentimes we will tend to like things that are related to us compared to not, which is really interesting because I was technically born right around like a couple of weeks before winter. I hate winter. I also do not like fall. I like summer. I'm sorry. I come from the subtropics, okay? Let me indulge. I love the subtropics. It is not Christmas in Florida if you're not wearing shorts. I know you feel like that's freakish. It's not. That's life. All right, so this is what's called the name letter effect. Most of us tend to like things that are related to us in some sort of way. So here's what's really interesting. I know about another study. I talk about this in my research methods class. People were given personality profiles of people, and this person either shared the participant's birthday or they didn't. People liked the person better when they had the same birthday, which is the exact opposite for me. I don't want anybody to share anything with me. I want to be special. Like, what? Somebody else has a birthday on December 10th? No, that's not allowed. Go away, Emily Dickinson. No, I'm kidding. Don't go away, Emily Dickinson, but I'm just saying I want to be unique. So I'm like, you can't share a birthday with me. No. Huh?
I said she is.
Not in a sense, yes, but in a sense, no. In a sense, no. Her poetry shall live on.
Like the author of the Yellow Wolf.
No, that's not Emily Dickinson.
Oh.
That's Charlotte Perkins Gilman.
Oh, I think that was the same person. I don't, their names aren't similar at all.
No, Emily Dickinson's probably best known for a poem like because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me, or something like that.
Yes.
Mhm. And a narrow fellow in the grass. Okay, so how many of you are really, really hard on yourselves? Yeah, I know, me too. So part of the reason that we find, even when we are accomplished, even when we are meeting our goals, why are so many of us so hard on ourselves? And researchers have kind of suggested there are a few different reasons for this. One of those is that it keeps us from repeating our mistakes. So when we mess up and we go, I'm so stupid, please don't talk about yourself that way. Thoughts tend to become habits. But the idea is to potentially keep us from doing something like that in the future. Now, how many of you have had this happen where you're like, you go to your friends and you go, I'm a terrible person. And they go, no, you're not, you're wonderful. Now, some people are hard on themselves because it does prompt positive feedback from other people. I believe the term is compliment fishing. Some people do that. In some cases, it is a way to prepare for failure. In other cases, it's about putting down your old self and being like, well, I used to be terrible, but look at me now. So the idea is being negative about your past self so that you can show that you have moved on and progressed and things like that. I would not necessarily say that that's a great idea. I don't think it's generally a good idea. Thoughts have a tendency to become habits, and those can become very, very wired in. And even if you don't think that about yourself in the moment, again, this can become something that's very habitual. And I would just like to remind you, your mind wants to think about things. Your mind will think about the silliest stuff, like having a fight with French bread and jousting with French bread in the grocery store. You probably shouldn't do that. Just because you think something doesn't make it true or real. So I would kind of say, try to be kind to yourself when you can. Be mindful. Huh?
I wanted that baguettes for.
I know. I've been wanting to do it for like 20 years. I have occasionally been thinking about it for 20 years.
You should go for it. The sale.
That's how you get kicked out of the Walmart. No.
Let's do it.
I love it at Panera. After the lunches, they throw in all the bread. I've had a baguette fight because the bread gets really stale and hard. And
You know what? I used to work at a bakery. I had to throw out the donuts every night that we didn't sell. Sometimes we gave it to a guy who said he had a pig, but I don't actually know that he had a pig. I never confirmed to see if he had a pig. Okay. Now, one thing that I will mention in terms of personality traits and focusing on the self is that depending on the culture that you are in, your culture is either going to emphasize yourself and your personal well-being, or you may come from a collectivist culture that emphasizes less of the individual and more on the group that you belong to. So individualistic cultures often will extend to places like the United States, a good chunk of North America, as well as a good chunk of the Western Hemisphere, tend to be more individualistic than not. There are exceptions, of course. It's all about meeting your potential, meeting your personal goals, and your identity comes from your personal traits and achievements. On the other hand, collectivist cultures are about group belonging, group goals, and your identity does not stem from what you do personally, but the groups that you belong to, your family of origin, things like that.
But I woke up in the middle of the train, which normally means you woke up at a bad time. So. I don't think I'm that good.
All right, everybody good here? Okay, are y'all ready to talk about social psych?
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's do it.
that was actually pretty enthused, like the Monday before Thanksgiving break. I'll take it. I am not wearing anything Christmas related or playing any Christmas music until we come back.
Yeah, I've been listening to all I want for.
No, I personally do, but I don't want to subject everybody else to it. I would say if you want a laugh, look up, not yet, but after class, it's not appropriate for class at all. Look up a group, the Yin Yang Twins. They have a rap called Ho Ho Ho. It's basically with the chorus of Frere Jacques. It's awful. I love it. Yes.
There's also a sort of Christmas song that I'd like to recommend. It's called Not Quite Almost Christmas Time by Tom Hardy. It's great.
Oh, I also very much enjoy Weird Al Yankovic's two Christmas songs, The Night Santa Went Crazy and Christmas at Ground Zero, although they are kind of dark. All right. Social psych. So here's what we are going to focus on. So how many of you have taken sociology or are currently taking sociology? So one thing that I'd like to really impress upon you is that there's a difference between sociology and social psychology. So sociology is about how groups behave in different social situations. Social psychology is about how the individual behaves in different social situations. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we think about other people. Where do we kind of shift our blame when things go wrong? What is the relationship between our attitudes and our behavior? Are our attitudes perfect predictors of behavior? Here's a hint. No. How are we influenced by other people? So if you've been waiting for me to talk about Stanley Milgram's obedience to authority study, I will. If you were hoping I would talk to you about the Stanford prison study, I will not. It is not very well designed at all. And then we'll talk about how we build relationships with other people. This includes friendships, romantic relationships. We'll also talk about how things like stereotypes and prejudice can actually hurt our relationships with other people. So how do we view the behavior of other people? Can somebody share with me something not nice that somebody else did to you over the weekend? Somebody cut you off in traffic, cut the line, shoot you a dirty look, tailgate you. Yeah, Luca. Okay. And what did you think about that person? Okay, now, has anybody done anything like that and sped through the crosswalk? Grace, did you just, I look like you pointed at Grace for a minute. I'm like, what did Grace do? So I was gonna say, have you ever done that before? Okay, has anybody here ever been tailgated? How does it make you feel?
Annoying.
Okay, have you ever tailgated somebody else? Really? Well, that's really good. Now, most of us have tailgated somebody else. Now, you know that it bothers you when other people do it to you. Why do you do it? Okay, so it's not you that's the problem, it's them. But when they tailgate you, they're the problem. This is really important. I'm not picking on you, Heidi. This is what most of us tend to do. When we think about, now I will mention that when you think about when you first meet somebody, there are many different factors that affect how we view other people. There are a lot of other factors that affect how we respond to people. So, how many of you have had an instance where an older student has described a professor to you? Like either take their class or, oh, don't take their class. Have those descriptions tended to be correct? You say yes, okay. Has there been anybody who you've been wrong about? Okay, and I think that's totally fair. I think that's totally fair. Another thing that we know, in addition to, and I would say too, our opinion of people absolutely can be affected by what other people say about them. We also have things like nonverbal behavior. So if you meet somebody who's constantly looking like this, you're probably not going to have very good feelings about them. They look pretty closed off. They look pretty uninterested. Now, for those of you who don't know, I cross my arms because A, it's comfortable, and B, I'm cold. This time of year, I am always cold. So one of the things that we're going to find is that most of our judgments actually come from thin slices. One thing that I have been reading up on, thanks to academic Twitter before it started going down the tubes, if you're neurodivergent, people can tell that there is something different about you from these thin slices. So one of the things that we find in general is that people, and this is not to rag on anybody that's neurotypical, it's just how people tend to operate. If somebody looks a little off in their thin slices, that doesn't really bother people who are neurodivergent. But for people who are neurotypical, they're like, ooh, yeah, that's not good. And that's going to lower their estimation of somebody because in general, as a collective, human beings don't like it when people are different in ways. It makes things complicated. And so one of the things that we know is that if you are neurodivergent, people can pick up on things that are a little different about you just from these thin slices. And it's why I think it's really important to be accepting of differences, because like some of us are just odd. Some of us really don't like eye contact, and some of us play with our hair a lot because it's our stem. I mean me. I touch my hair a lot. I touch my hair a
Making eye
lot.
contact with you while I'm on.
Well, and I will say I am kind of drawn to that constant hand motion, but no, I wasn't talking about you. I was
And when
talking
you
about
said,
me.
like, people being able to identify and laugh, or it's just like a couple of weeks earlier in this class, you're like, I love being next to you in class because it's so clear that you're ADHD, because even when you're paying a lot of attention, you're not ever not doing something. Yeah. It's just
Okay, I thought for a minute that you said I said that. I would
No,
never.
no.
I would never.
It's just
And
funny
then-
because I can just like look at her and she'll just like go like this and do something else. It's very entertaining.
But we can pick that up from thin slices from people. We absolutely can. So how do we view other people's behavior? So we tend to judge other people's character based on how they behave. So for example, this occasionally happens to me sometimes, and this occasionally happens when I have a student who isn't really doing well in class. Their attendance is really spotty, or they're not really very focused. And they'll come to me and they'll go, I really love your class. And that's a case where I'm getting, from my perspective, a disconnect between what they're saying and what their behavior looks like. Generally, I can't get inside your head. I'm not a mind reader. So when I am trying to figure out whether or not somebody likes the class or not, I'm going to be basing it off their behavior. If their attendance is spotty and things like that, if they look disengaged, I'm going to get a disconnect between what they're telling me and what they're actually doing. And when we make attributions, what are we going to focus on more often? If there's a conflict between words and behavior, we default to behavior every single time. So when we're trying to judge behavior and people's character, we are making what Fritz Heider called an attribution. So people will tend to do things for a certain reason. So, for example, as Luca mentioned, if somebody is speeding through the crosswalk and they don't see you, we are often going to explain that behavior in terms of something related to their character. They don't care. They are inconsiderate, or maybe nastier things that are inappropriate to say in class.
Or at lightest, you still assume they're a bad driver.
Yeah, exactly. So notice that when somebody does something that we don't expect, when it's another person, we're going to make a character judgment, a personality, or a dispositional judgment. We're going to assume it's something in their character. I'm not saying that we all do this, but some of us do this. In fact, most of us do this. Somebody's tailgating me. I'm like, why are you in such a hurry, you jerk? Okay, does anybody need some more time here? Okay, so before we move on, we have to talk about the two major attributions that we can make for people and for ourselves, because folks, we are also a people. So we can make what is called a personal attribution. So this is a character judgment. We see behavior occurring because of personal factors. They did this because they're rude. They did this because they're mean. They did this because they're inconsiderate or self-important. On the other hand, we can make what is called a situational attribution. They sped through the crosswalk because they legitimately didn't see me. They sped through the crosswalk because they're in a hurry. They sped through the crosswalk because they were too busy fiddling with the radio and they chose not to see me. So we could say that our behavior is due to external factors. Now, attributions are often going to be based on what is called the just world hypothesis. So the just world hypothesis is basically the idea that the notion that we live in a fair world. Now, I know some of you are looking at me thinking, but Dr. Gilchrist, the world isn't fair. Yeah, I know. If you really wanted to get me riled up as a child, all you had to do was say life's not fair. And I'd be like, but it should be. But here's the thing. Life isn't fair, yet most of the attributions that we make are based on the notion that we live in a world that is fair. That means good things happen to you if you are a good person. Bad things happen to you if you are a bad person. People get what they deserve and people deserve what they get. Now, sometimes this works. I know some not so nice people who are starting to get their karma, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little bit of Schadenfreude at that. Because they haven't always been so nice to me. So I'm kind of like listening to Taylor Swift's Karma in my head a little bit. But it has some unfortunate implications, doesn't it? Just world hypothesis says that if you're being treated poorly, it's because of something in your character. If you're being bullied, it's because of something that you did. If you're living in poverty, it's because you did something to deserve that poverty. Likewise, the flip side of this is if you're making a lot of money, it's because you're really good at your job. If you bought out Twitter, it's because you deserved it, because you're a great person. You know,
And that's why people wear shirts if you have parties.
I was gonna come back around. Okay, so the just world hypothesis basically says people get what they deserve and people deserve what they get. So it's very much like a weird sort of prosperity gospel. So the idea is that if you have good things happen to you, it's because you're a good person, or because you were blessed by a higher power, or because you worked hard for it. If bad things are happening to you, it's because you deserved it. I can tell you this. After being in a situation where my mother lost her job, we got evicted from our home. I have seen multiple cars get repoed. My mother is one of the hardest working people that I know, and she's in a better place now. But at the time, you could not tell me that we were struggling because my mother was lazy. That was certainly not the case. So the just world hypothesis does not necessarily hold up. I am happy to tell you now that she has an MBA now, and she makes way more money than me, which, like, no, you have to understand, for a while, even with my grad school stipend, I was making more money than anybody in my family. And now they all make more money than me. And it makes me so happy and a little jealous, just a little. I'm also very happy for them. Okay, so we are harder on other people when they screw up. This is what is called the fundamental attribution error. When somebody does something incorrect, or they break the rules, or something bad happens to somebody, we overestimate personality as a cause, and we underestimate the situation. So if they are speeding, it's because they were a jerk. If they got picked on, it's because they did something to bring it on themselves. If they are poor, it is because they are lazy and are not working hard enough. So we overestimate personal disposition and personality traits in other people, and we underestimate the situation. We're really hard on other people. So one of the things that people have often said, if other people's behavior really trips you up, one of the things that you can do is move away from making these personal distributions and make situational distributions for you instead. So if somebody's tailgating you, or somebody cuts you off in traffic, don't say they're a jerk. Say maybe they had somewhere really important they have to be. Maybe they need to go to the hospital right now, or something like that. Yeah.
This is basically what my FWS podcast was about, because my family has adopted the phrase, they might be pregnant, as a general as a general term of like reminding yourself that you don't know whatever situation is causing them. But it's happened because we were on the road on a road trip and people were driving crazy, and instead of being like, wow, they suck at driving, we're like, maybe they're trying to get their pregnant wife in labor to the hospital. They might be pregnant.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you think that we're this hard on ourselves as a rule? We're not talking about individuals here. We're talking about people as a collective. Are we harder on other people, or are we harder on ourselves? We're harder on other people. So we are much kinder to ourselves. We have what is called the actor-observer bias. Now, some of this is due to the fact that you can't get into anybody else's head, but you know what's going on in your head when you do something. So the actor-observer bias is basically when it's our own behavior, we focus on situational factors. Oh, I tailgated because I'm in a hurry and they're just driving too darn slow. I cut somebody off because I didn't see them and I didn't check my blind spot. This person's tailgating because they're a jerk. This person cut me off because they're rude and inconsiderate. So we focus on situational factors when it's us doing something wrong or making a mistake or behaving out of character. And we focus on personal disposition when it's somebody else doing that, because we know our own mind. We don't know anybody else's. All right. What do you say? One more slide and we call it a Thanksgiving break?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we do as well with other people is we stereotype them. So stereotypes generally are very much, at least in part, due to a product of our cognition. Now, that does not mean it is okay, but here's what we know about our mind. You only have so much attention, so much time, so much energy, and so much space to process people as full individuals. So one of the things that we will find is that when we don't have a lot of time or attention or energy, our mind wants to make categories to simplify the world around us. So a lot of the stereotypes that we see are simplifications of the world. Not saying that it's okay, but it's something that our mind wants us to do. It helps make the world easier to navigate. But unfortunately, in our culture, we do have a lot of stereotypes that are automatically activated, even without us being aware that we are doing such things. So I'm just going to give you a really silly example because we're almost out of time. What stereotypes do you have from people from Florida? Okay,
Bad drivers.
I will agree with you on that. You know that most of them aren't originally from Florida, right?
That's how it is at Highland. Like, you keep getting
Okay.
other states, they just suck.
Okay.
Especially in winter, it's so bad.
So if I have time and the inclination, I might do a lecture recording, but maybe not. We'll kind of see how far we get on Monday. But that quiz that I posted this morning is on Social Psych, so you should read that chapter. Any question is fair game. So if you haven't started looking into Social Psych, do so to do well on the quiz. You can take it as many times as you want. I will take your highest score. Have a wonderful break, and I will see you when you get back. Make good choices, be safe, and for the love of Pete, try not to get sick. Which recital?
There's a